In Nigeria lived Dr. Dorothea, a woman whose dedication to medicine had won the admiration and respect of many. Dorothea was a well-known figure in the city's neighborhoods, where her presence signified hope and healing. Her patients knew they could count on her, not only for her medical competence, but also for the care and attention she dedicated to each one of them. However, one day everything changed. Kofi, a wealthy merchant and one of his most recent patients, passed away suddenly. Kofi's death not only shook the community but also brought an avalanche of accusations against Dorothea. She was called to a meeting with the hospital board, where the director, Mr. Ease, and other members of management confronted her in a ruthless manner. "Dr. Dorothea, you are accused of medical negligence in the case of Mr. Kofi's death," announced Mr. Ease, with a cold and authoritative voice. Dorothea was stunned. "Negligence?" he replied, almost breathless. "I followed all the procedures. The medication was correct. Everything has been revised several times." But his words fell on deaf ears. Mr. Ease, visibly irritated, abruptly interrupted her. "It doesn't matter. Kofi's family is influential and is demanding justice. As of today, you are suspended from your duties." The headmaster's words echoed in Dorothea's mind as she left the room, feeling betrayed and helpless. News of her suspension quickly spread throughout the hospital, and before long, Dr. Dorothea, once a symbol of hope, found herself at the center of a scandal. Feeling devastated and helpless, Dorothea wandered the streets of Lagos, trying to make sense of what had happened. Every corner of the city brought back memories of the patients he had helped, the smiles he had restored. His mind was buzzing with unanswered questions. That night, Dorothea's sadness led her to the cemetery where Kofi was buried. The place was quiet, enveloped in a respectful silence that seemed to amplify the pain in his heart. Carrying a wreath of flowers, she walked slowly to Kofi's grave, hoping to find some kind of solace in saying goodbye. When she arrived at the tomb, she noticed that she was not alone. Two foreign men, dressed in black, stood beside the grave, speaking in a language she didn't know well but which sounded vaguely familiar. They spoke quietly but with intensity, as if they were discussing something important. Dorothea didn't want to interrupt them, so she pretended not to understand their language and placed the wreath on Kofi's grave. As he did so, he heard fragments of the men's conversation. One of them mentioned something about covering up and running away. Intrigued and suspicious, Dorothea tried to listen more, but soon the men noticed her presence and moved away, giving her wary looks. Confused and disturbed by the encounter, Dorothea decided to leave the cemetery, but something stopped her. As he walked away, he heard a strange sound, a faint groan that seemed to come from beneath the ground. His heart sped up. What could that be? Was it her imagination, or was something much more sinister going on there? Driven by a mixture of fear and curiosity, Dorothea sought out the cemetery caretaker, an elderly man named Mr. Kwame. Known for his wisdom and kindness, he was someone Dorothea felt she could trust. "Mr. Kwame, I need your help," she said, trying to remain calm. "I think I heard something coming from Kofi's grave. A groan, as if someone were down there." Mr. Kwame looked at her with a serious expression, but did not question her. Picking up his tools, he followed Dorothea back to the tomb, where they began digging. What they found would change their lives forever. The discovery of Ease, alive and buried in the tomb intended for Kofi, came as a shock to Dorothea and Mr. Kwame. While Kwame helped Ease out of the coffin, Dorothea tried to understand what was happening. Who was this man, and how did he end up there? Ease, still weak and disoriented, told his story. He was a homeless man who had been hired to replace the gravediggers on the day of the funeral. During the work, he was drugged and placed in the coffin. He woke up only when he heard the sounds of digging above him. Dorothea and Mr. Kwame were perplexed. Why would anyone do this? The answer seemed to be related to the foreign men she had seen previously. Determined to discover the truth, Dorothea knew she needed help. It was then that he remembered Eric, a former police officer who now worked as a taxi driver. He had experience in investigations and could be the key to unraveling this mystery. The next day, Dorothea met Eric at Yaba Market, where he often picked up passengers. When she saw him, she felt a mixture of hope and anxiety. He told him everything that had happened from Kofi's death to E's discovery. "Eric, I need your help," she said, her voice trembling. "Something very wrong is happening. Kofi is missing, and someone tried to bury E's in his place." Eric, who had a hard expression marked by the scars of the past, listened attentively. He knew that Dorothea was not the type to exaggerate. If she said something was wrong, he believed her. "Let's start by investigating these men you saw in the cemetery," replied Eric. "They may be involved in this in some way." Dorothea nodded, relieved to have someone to count on. Together, they began to devise a plan to discover the identities of the foreigners and understand what really happened to Kofi. Eric used his old connections in the Lagos police and underworld to gather information. It was a slow and dangerous process, but little by little they began to put the pieces of the puzzle together. They discovered that Kofi was involved in shady dealings and owed money to several powerful people. His sudden death and the disappearance of his body indicated that he may have faked his own death to escape his problems. Meanwhile, Dorothea continued to work with Mr. Kwame and Ease. The cemetery caretaker, with his wisdom accumulated over the years, helped maintain calm and clarity amidst the chaos. Ease, in turn, showed himself to be a brave and determined man to help unravel the mystery that almost led to his death. On a silent night, as they discussed the case, Mr. Kwame shared a story from his youth. He spoke about the importance of truth and justice, and how sometimes facing fear was necessary to bring light to the darkness. "The truth always finds its way, no matter how many layers of lies cover it," said Mr. Kwame, with a gleam of determination in his eyes. These words resonated deeply with Dorothea. She knew her search for answers wasn't just about Kofi or her own reputation. It was about justice and the fight against corruption that permeated many aspects of society. With this new determination, Dorothea and Eric continued their investigation. They discovered that the foreigners were businessmen who had financial interests in one of Kofi's companies. They were willing to do anything to protect their investments, including faking a death and burying a man alive. The revelation shocked Dorothea. She knew she needed to expose these men and bring the truth to light. With the help of Eric and Mr. Kwame, she devised a plan to confront those responsible and clear her name. The discovery of Ease alive and buried in Kofi's grave was an event that shook Dorothea and Mr. Kwame to the core. They could hardly believe what they were seeing. Eze's pale face, emerging from the coffin, looked like a scene straight out of a nightmare. While Mr. Kwame helped Eze out of the hole, Dorothea checked for vital signs and tried to calm him down. Eze, shaking with fear and exhaustion, told the story of how he was drugged and placed in the coffin. He could barely remember who had hired him, only remembering being approached by two strange men who offered him a well-paid temporary job. All he had to do was replace the grave diggers for a few hours. He accepted the job, without imagining that he would end up buried alive. Dorothea and Mr. Kwame were dismayed. Who could have committed such a vile act? It's because they knew they needed more information to understand the magnitude of what they were facing. With Eze resting safely at Mr. Kwame's house, Dorothea decided that the only person who could help them solve this mystery was Eric, the former police officer who now worked as a taxi driver. The next morning, Dorothea left the house determined to find Eric. She knew that he used to pick up passengers at the busy Balogun Square. When he got there, he found it parked on a corner, waiting for customers. Eric, with his attentive gaze and calm demeanor, seemed like an island of tranquility amid the chaos of the city. Dorothea approached and told Eric everything that had happened from Kofi's death to Eze's discovery. He listened silently, taking in every detail. "We need to find out who these men are and what really happened to Kofi," she said, her voice full of determination. Eric nodded. "Let's start investigating these foreigners. If we can identify who they are, we can better understand their motivations." Dorothea felt relieved to have Eric by her side. Together, they began to devise a plan to find the men Dorothea had seen in the cemetery. Eric used his old connections in the Lagos police and underworld to gather information. It was a slow and dangerous process, but little by little they began to put the pieces of the puzzle together. They discovered that the foreigners were, in fact, investors in one of Kofi's companies. They were worried about financial instability and the threat of losing their investment. To protect their interests, They decided to fake Kofi's death by placing a fake body in the coffin. Ease was an innocent victim of this plot, chosen at random to cover up the plan. The revelation brought momentary relief, but also increased the sense of urgency. Dorothea knew she needed to act quickly to expose the truth and clear her name. With the help of Eric and Mr. Kwame, she began to gather evidence that could be used to confront those responsible. Meanwhile, Ease, now recovered, decided he wanted to help. He offered to testify against the men who had buried him alive, sharing his story with authorities and the press. His courage inspired Dorothea and the others to keep fighting despite the dangers involved. One silent night, while discussing the case at Mr. Kwame's house, Dorothea had an epiphany. He remembered Kwame's words about the truth finding its way no matter how many layers of lies covered it. This motivated her even more to continue her search for justice. Dorothea, Eric, Mr. Kwame, and Ease have formed an unlikely but powerful alliance. United by their desire to expose the truth and fight corruption, they began to prepare the ground for the final confrontation with those responsible for what had happened to Kofi. They knew it wouldn't be easy, but they were determined to bring justice and reveal the true colors of the men who had caused so much suffering. The search for answers led Dorothea and her unlikely team to delve deep into the dark secrets surrounding Kofi's death. While Eric continued to use his investigative skills to gather information, Dorothea worked tirelessly to gather evidence and prepare a solid case. With each new discovery, the plot became more complex and dangerous. One night, while reviewing documents at Mr. Kwame's house, Eric made a crucial discovery. He found a set of emails exchanged between Kofi and foreign investors, revealing details about the financial problems Kofi was facing and his desperate plans to escape. The emails also mentioned a covert operation to fake his death, which included the involvement of powerful figures in the government and police. "This is exactly what we needed," Eric said, holding up the emails with a triumphant expression. "We have enough evidence to link these men to Kofi's fake death." Dorothea felt a wave of relief and determination. With this evidence, they could finally confront those responsible and clear their names. But they knew the fight was far from over. The men behind this plot were influential and would not back down easily. They decided that the best way to expose the truth would be through the press. Ease, who was determined to tell his story, was instrumental in this. Together, they organized a press conference where they would present the evidence and denounce the culprits. On the day of the press conference, the room was full of journalists and onlookers. Dorothea felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders, but she also knew this was her chance to get justice. Eric, Mr. Kwame, and Ease were by her side, ready to support her. Dorothea began the press conference by talking about Kofi's death and the events that followed. They then presented the emails and other evidence they had gathered. When Ease took the stage to tell his story, the room fell silent. His storytelling was powerful and emotional, and everyone in the room could feel the gravity of the situation. "I was buried alive by these men," said Ease, his voice shaking with emotion. "They used me as a pawn in their dirty games, but thanks to Dorothea and Mr. Kwame, I am alive to tell my story." Journalists were absorbing every word, and the news quickly spread. Public pressure increased, and authorities were forced to act. An official investigation was launched, and the men involved in the plot were called to testify. As the investigation progressed, Dorothea continued to fight to clear her name. She was called to testify several times, and each time, she faced the difficult questions with courage and determination. She knew she was on the right path, and nothing would make her give up. Over time, the evidence accumulated and the truth finally came out. The men responsible for the plot were arrested and prosecuted, including foreign investors and several influential figures. Kofi, who had fled to a foreign country, was tracked down and extradited to face justice. The victory brought immense relief to Dorothea. Her name was cleared, and she was finally able to return to the hospital and continue her work. But the experience also changed her profoundly. She realized that sometimes the fight for justice required more than courage. It required relentless determination and a willingness to face any adversity. Through this journey, Dorothea not only regained her reputation, but also discovered the strength of her human connections. Eric, Mr. Kwame, and Ease became more than allies. They became friends and fighting companions. Together, They showed that the truth always finds its way, even in the darkest moments. As the investigation continued, Dorothea found comfort and support in the friends she had made during this turbulent journey. Mr. Kwame, in particular, became a central figure in his life. His wisdom and experience were a beacon of guidance in the midst of the storm. One afternoon, while they were resting after a long day of work, Mr. Kwame decided to share an important part of his story with Dorothea. He took her to a quiet place in the cemetery where they could talk without interruption. "Dorothea, I feel like it's time for you to know more about me," said Mr. Kwame, with a thoughtful look. "I've been carrying this burden alone for a long time, and I think it's time to share it." Dorothea, intrigued and touched by Mr. Kwame's confidence, listened intently as he told her about his youth. Mr. Kwame had been a respected teacher in his home village, educating generations of children and youth. He loved his work and was deeply admired by everyone. However, his life changed drastically when a tragic accident took the lives of his wife and son. Devastated by the loss, Mr. Kwame decided to leave the village and seek a new life in the city. He ended up finding work as a cemetery caretaker, a place where he could find peace and reflection. "Here, among the dead, I found a different kind of peace," he explained, with a melancholic smile. "Life can be cruel, but it can also be surprising. I met incredible people here, like you and Ease." Kwame's story. She felt a new respect and admiration for him, now understanding the depth of his wisdom and resilience. He decided he would do everything he could to help him and honor his friendship. Meanwhile, Ease was also recovering well. He had found a new purpose in helping Dorothea and Eric with their investigation. His courage and determination were inspiring, and he had become a valued member of the team. One night, as they discussed next steps, Dorothea had an idea. "Ease, have you ever thought about sharing your story with other people?" she asked. "Your experience can help many who have gone through similar situations." Ease reflected for a moment and then smiled. "I think you're right, Dorothea. Telling my story could be the key to helping others find courage and hope." With this in mind, Ease began working on a book about his life and recent experiences. Mr. Kwame and Dorothea supported him completely, helping him find a publisher and promote his work. Ease's book, titled Reborn of the Earth, became an immediate success. Her story of survival and resilience touched the hearts of many people, inspiring them to fight for justice and truth in their own lives. Meanwhile, the friendship between Dorothea, Mr. Kwame, and Ease continued to blossom. They became a true family, united not only by the fight against injustice, but also by love and mutual respect. Kwame's past and the new direction in Ease's life brought a sense of peace and fulfillment to Dorothea. She knew that no matter what the future held, she would always have these friends by her side, ready to face any challenge. Dorothea, Eric, Mr. Kwame, and Ease formed a group determined to bring justice to Kofi and expose those responsible for the nefarious plot. The path to the truth, however, was dangerous and full of obstacles. They knew the men involved were powerful and would not back down easily. The first big hurdle was gathering enough evidence for a solid case. Eric, with his investigative experience, led this part of the work. He used his old connections in the police and underworld to obtain crucial information. These investigations often took him to dangerous areas of the city, where he needed to keep his head cool and his senses sharp. In one of these investigations, Eric found an informant willing to talk. It was a former associate of Kofi, who was sorry for his actions and wanted to help. The man revealed details about Kofi's financial schemes and how he planned his escape. This information was vital to understanding the extent of the plot and those involved. While Eric conducted the investigation, Dorothea focused on gathering witnesses. She visited former co-workers, Kofi's patients, and even members of his family. The task was challenging, as many were afraid of reprisals or simply did not trust the justice system. One night, Dorothea received an unexpected call from a woman claiming to have important information. They met in a discreet cafe, where the woman, visibly nervous, told Dorothea about hidden documents that could incriminate foreign investors. These documents were kept in a safe in Kofi's mansion. With this new clue, Dorothea and Eric planned an operation to recover the documents. They knew they would need help, and it was then that Mr. Kwame suggested involving some of the neighborhood youths, who were skilled in technology and discreet in their actions. Combining their skills, they managed to break into the mansion and recover the documents without being detected. The documents confirmed their suspicions and provided overwhelming evidence against the investors and their accomplices. With this evidence, Dorothea and Eric went to the public prosecutor's office, where they presented their case. The initial reaction was skepticism, but the seriousness of the evidence and E's support as an eyewitness changed the prosecutor's opinion. News of the case began to spread through the media, bringing a new level of public attention. Dorothea, Eric, and Mr. Kwame gave interviews, telling their stories and highlighting the importance of fighting for the truth. Ease, with his book gaining popularity, has also become an influential voice in the campaign for justice. Foreign investors, feeling the growing pressure, tried everything to silence Dorothea and her team. They received anonymous threats, and on one occasion, Eric was attacked by masked men while he was investigating. Despite the dangers, they remained steadfast in their mission. Finally, public pressure and the evidence gathered forced authorities to act. A major police operation was mounted to arrest those responsible. The investors were caught and their properties were seized. Kofi, who had fled abroad, was tracked down and extradited to face justice. The victory was a moment of relief and celebration for Dorothea and her friends. However, they knew that the fight for truth and justice was never truly over. They continued to support other cases of injustice in the community, using their experiences to help those who had no voice. Dorothea, now back in the hospital, felt stronger and more confident than ever. She knew that with the help of her friends, she could face any adversity. The fight for the truth had strengthened their bonds and shown that courage and determination could truly change the world. With the truth about Kofi and the investors finally exposed, Dorothea thought she could find some relief and normalcy in her life. However, another twist was about to happen. Eric, who had been a pillar of strength throughout the investigation, was about to discover something that would change his life forever. While organizing the documents recovered from Kofi's mansion, Eric found a strange file, labeled with the name Skinner. When he opened the file, he found old letters and birth certificates that told a story that seemed straight out of a novel. The letters revealed that Kofi had been adopted after the death of his biological parents in a tragic accident. Eric, intrigued, began to investigate further. With the help of his connections in the police and the underworld, he discovered that Kofi had a biological brother who had been adopted by another family after his parents' death. This brother, who grew up without knowing his true origin, was none other than Eric. The revelation came as a shock. Eric, who had always believed he was an orphan without a family, now discovered he had a lost brother and that his own life was intertwined with Kofi's in ways he never could have imagined. The connection brought a mix of emotions, joy, confusion, and a sense that her life was about to change drastically. Dorothea was the first person Eric told. They were at Mr. Kwame's house, reviewing the documents, when Eric raised his head and said, "Dorothea, you won't believe what I discovered." She looked at him, seeing the seriousness on his face. "What is it, Eric?" she asked, worried. "I think Kofi and I are biological brothers," he replied, showing her the documents. Dorothea gaped. "My God, Eric, this is amazing. How do you feel?" "I don't know," he replied, with an uncertain smile. "It's a lot to process. I never thought I would find my family this way." With the support of Dorothea and Mr. Kwame, Eric decided to investigate further. "I wanted to confirm the veracity of the documents and, if possible, find Kofi to confront him." Through his connections, he managed to organize a DNA test that confirmed the relationship. The reunion with Kofi was an emotionally charged event. Kofi, now in prison and awaiting trial, was visibly shaken when he learned the truth. "Eric, I had no idea," he said, his eyes full of tears. "If I had known, I would never have done the things I did." Eric felt a mixture of anger and compassion. "Kofi, I can't change the past, but maybe we can find a way into the future," he replied, with a tone of hope. Dorothea, who accompanied Eric during the encounter, saw the potential for redemption and reconciliation. He knew that discovering the truth about his origins was an important step for both of them. Over time, Kofi began to cooperate with authorities, revealing more details about the financial schemes and helping to dismantle the criminal networks that had helped him. Meanwhile, Eric began to explore his own origins. He discovered more about his biological parents and the life they could have had. The discovery brought a sense of closure, but also a new beginning. He decided to use his new position and connections to help other orphans and people in vulnerable situations. Dorothea continued to work at the hospital, but now with a new sense of purpose. She and Eric became even closer, finding comfort and support in each other. Over time, they realized that their feelings went beyond friendship. A romance began to blossom, bringing new light into their lives. The discovery of Eric's hidden life and his connection to Kofi showed that even in the darkest circumstances, truth and love can prevail. Together, Dorothea and Eric were ready to face any challenge, knowing they had each other and a new family formed by choices and bonds of heart. As Dorothea and Eric's lives began to stabilize following the revelations and challenges they faced, a new challenge emerged, this time involving a boy named Nicholas. Dorothea met Nicholas during a visit to the cemetery with Mr. Kwame. He was a 6-year-old boy, alone and crying near his mother's grave. Nicholas had recently lost his mother and was living with his stepfather, Lucas, a man known for his abusive behavior. Dorothea could not ignore the situation. He saw the same desperation in Nicholas's eyes that he had seen in many of his patients, and he knew he needed to do something. After talking to Nicholas and hearing his stories about the abuse he suffered, Dorothea decided she needed to take action. She sought out a lawyer and began the process to obtain custody of the boy. He knew it would be an uphill battle, as Lucas didn't want to lose control over Nicholas and was willing to fight in court to keep it. Dorothea prepared for the legal battle with the same determination she had shown in the Kofi investigation. He gathered evidence of Lucas' abuse, including statements from neighbors and medical reports documenting Nicholas' injuries. But Lucas would not give up easily. He appeared in court with his own lawyer and tried to paint an image of a caring, responsible father. "I love Nicholas as if he were my own son," Lucas declared in court, trying to hide his abusive nature. "I've always taken care of him and I want the best for him." Dorothea knew Lucas was lying. With the help of Eric and Mr. Kwame, he presented his case convincingly, highlighting Nicholas' well-being and safety. "This boy deserves to live in a safe and loving environment," argued Dorothea, with tears in her eyes. "We can't leave him in the hands of a man who hurts him." Nicholas also had the chance to speak in court. His courage surprised everyone. "I want to live with Aunt Dorothea," he said, in a firm voice. "She is kind and makes me feel safe." Nicholas' words touched the judge's heart. After a long deliberation, the court ruled in favor of Dorothea. She was given custody of Nicholas, and Lucas was warned not to approach the boy. The victory brought a sense of relief and joy to Dorothea. "I knew I had done the right thing, and that Nicholas now had a chance at a better life." The transition to her new life with Nicholas was not easy, but Dorothea was determined to provide him with a home full of love and security. With the help of Eric and Mr. Kwame, they adjusted to the new routine. Nicholas started attending school and, little by little, began to regain the joy of being a child. Dorothea also learned a lot during this experience. The fight for custody of Nicholas taught her about the importance of family, love, and commitment. She was grateful to have Eric by her side, offering support and unconditional love. The relationship between Dorothea and Eric blossomed during this period. They became a true family, united by their love for Nicholas and their desire to create a better future. Eric, with his experience and determination, became a father figure to Nicholas, helping him feel safe and loved. Mr. Kwame, with his wisdom and guidance, continued to be a valuable mentor to all. He was always there, offering advice and support in the most difficult times. His presence was a constant source of comfort and stability. Over time, Nicholas began to prosper. He made new friends at school, excelled in his activities, and showed a special talent for music. Dorothea and Eric supported him in all his passions, encouraging him to follow his dreams. The custody battle for Nicholas wasn't just a legal victory. It was proof that love and determination can overcome the most difficult obstacles. Dorothea, Eric, and Nicholas formed a close-knit family, ready to face any challenge life threw at them. They knew that together they could overcome any adversity and create a future full of hope and happiness. Victory in court and winning custody of Nicholas brought new light to the lives of Dorothea, Eric, and Mr. Kwame. But as they celebrated this personal victory, there was still the outstanding issue of justice for Kofi and clearing Dorothea's name. Investigations continued and public pressure increased for those responsible to be brought to justice. Dorothea, now more determined than ever, continued to gather evidence and testimony. Ease, who had become a public figure through his book Reborn of the Earth, used his influence to keep the case in the media and ensure that the truth was not forgotten. One of the biggest revelations came from Kofi, who, faced with the evidence and the pressure of the investigation, decided to cooperate. In a deal to reduce his sentence, he revealed details about the plot he had orchestrated, including the names of foreign investors and their illegal operations. His confession was a decisive blow to those responsible, who could now no longer hide their actions. Meanwhile, Eric and Dorothea worked tirelessly to ensure authorities took swift and effective action. They used all their connections and resources to press for justice. The evidence was irrefutable, and public opinion was firmly on their side. Finally, the day of judgment arrived. The courtroom was packed with journalists, onlookers, and Dorothea's supporters. She was nervous, but also confident. "I knew I had done everything I could to bring the truth to light." The prosecutor presented the case with clarity and conviction, detailing the actions of the foreign investors and Kofi's cooperation. The evidence was overwhelming, and the testimonies of Dorothea, Eric, and Ease were powerful and moving. When the judge read the verdict, the room fell silent. "Considering all the evidence presented, I declare the defendants guilty of all charges," he announced. "I sentence them to maximum penalties for their crimes." The relief and joy were palpable. Dorothea felt tears of gratitude run down her face. Eric hugged her, whispering words of comfort and pride. Ease, Mr. Kwame, and Nicholas, who were also present, shared the moment of triumph. This victory wasn't just about justice for Kofi. It was about the vindication of Dorothea, the restoration of her reputation, and the proof that the truth always prevails. She was returned to the hospital with honors, and the administration made a public statement apologizing for the unfair treatment she had received. The experience also brought new clarity and purpose to Dorothea. She realized the importance of fighting corruption and injustice in all forms. He decided to use his position and influence to help other victims of injustice and to promote change in the healthcare system. Eric, who had been a rock throughout the process, also found a new purpose. Inspired by Dorothea's courage and their experience together, he decided to found an organization to support victims of crime and injustice. He used his investigative skills and new connections to help those in need. Nicholas, now living in a loving and safe environment, flourished. He excelled in school and extracurricular activities, showing a special talent for music. Dorothea and Eric supported him in all his passions, encouraging him to follow his dreams. The victory in court was a milestone in all of their lives. It represented not only justice for Kofi, but also proof that truth and integrity can overcome any obstacle. Dorothea, Eric, and Nicholas formed a close-knit family, ready to face any challenge life threw at them. Dorothea knew there was still a lot of work to be done, but with the strength and support of her new family, she felt confident and optimistic about the future. Together, they were ready to create a future full of hope, love, and justice. With justice finally achieved in life beginning to return to normal, Dorothea, Eric, and Nicholas were ready to begin a new chapter. Their experience together brought them together in ways they never could have imagined. They formed a strong and loving family, ready to face any challenge. Dorothea was returned to the hospital with honors, and the administration made a public statement apologizing for the unfair treatment she had received. Her reputation was restored, and she returned to practicing medicine with even more passion and dedication. He decided to use his position to promote change in the healthcare system and help other victims of injustice. Eric, inspired by Dorothea's courage and their experience together, decided to found an organization to support victims of crime and injustice. With his investigative skills and new connections, he began helping those who needed it most. His organization quickly gained recognition and support, and he felt fulfilled that he could make a difference in so many people's lives. Nicholas, now living in a loving and safe environment, flourished. He excelled in school and extracurricular activities, showing a special talent for music. Dorothea and Eric supported him in all his passions, encouraging him to follow his dreams. Nicholas felt happy and safe, knowing he had a family who loved and cared for him. The relationship between Dorothea and Eric also blossomed. They discovered that their feelings went beyond friendship and became partners in life and love. They decided to get married in a simple ceremony, surrounded by friends and family. The happiness they shared was evident to everyone around them, and they were ready to face the future together. Mr. Kwame, who had been a mentor and friend throughout their journey, continued to be a central figure in their lives. Their wisdom and guidance were invaluable, and he was proud to see how everyone had grown and transformed. Mr. Kwame decided it was time to retire and passed on the role of cemetery caretaker to Ease, who had found a new purpose in looking after the site and helping those who visited it. Ease, in turn, continued to write and share her story. His book, Earth Reborn, became a bestseller, and he used his platform to advocate for justice and equality. Ease also began working with Eric's organization, using his own experience to help other victims of injustice find courage and hope. Everyone's lives had changed in unexpected ways, but they were ready to embrace the future with confidence and optimism. They formed a united family, full of love and mutual support. Together, they faced challenges and overcame obstacles, showing that truth and love always prevail. Dorothea, Eric, Nicholas, Mr. Kwame, and Ease were ready to create a future full of hope, love, and justice. They knew there would still be challenges ahead, but they also knew that, together, they could face anything. They were ready to begin a new chapter in their lives, filled with gratitude for the lessons they had learned and the connections they had formed. And so, with justice achieved in life beginning to return to normal, Dorothea and her new family were ready to face the future with courage and hope. They knew that, together, they could overcome any obstacle and create a better world for everyone around them. The journey they had traveled had profoundly transformed them, but it had also strengthened them, showing them that love and truth are the most powerful forces in existence.